Hello and welcome once again to episode 106 of Code Completion. We're a group of iOS developers and educators hoping to share what we love most about development, Apple technology, and completing your code. My name is Dimitri and I'll be your host once again for this episode, and I'm joined today by my fellow completionist, Spencer.
Hey there.
So it's been one very crazy week, it seems, in the tech sphere. So we're going to go ahead and ignore most of that to talk about 16-inch iPad rumors, because I want to be excited about like technology and stuff, and this past week just depressed me. So let's be excited about stuff. So yes, Spencer, can you tell us more about these 16-inch iPads? I believe you had a term you'd like to coin before anyone else does.
Yes, just like I am placing my flag on like the M1 Extreme, M2 Extreme eventually happening for like the Mac Pro. This one's going to be called the iPad Studio. Just calling it now. That makes perfect sense for like a big old, drawing tablet type of thing. I'm assuming that it'll come with some kind of fancy, stand to help you draw on it, kind of like easel style at a good angle. I don't know. That's my guess. It doesn't say anything about that in the article, but this is just a report. Someone's familiar with what's going on internally at Apple is planning on releasing a 16-inch iPad in 2023. So I can't remember. Did they say Q4 2023? So hot minute, but so probably I guess like in the event that they just had just a year later. So I think it'd be interesting. Dimitri just mentioned how he just mentioned pre-show about system preferences in macOS Ventura looking pretty crappy, and they do, but it looks a lot like iOS's settings. So it's like they're getting so close to this weird merger of iOS and macOS looking and feeling the same things that I wonder if this will run macOS. I don't know, but an interesting idea the 12.9-inch iPad Pro is a chonker as far as screen size goes. Feels humongous. So carrying, it would just be like carrying a MacBook Pro around, I guess, with this 16-inch.
But yeah, I really can't see Apple like releasing an iPad that doesn't have any built-in mechanism to kind of use it anywhere. Because like a regular iPad, you can hold it and you can use it, right? The 12 is like really pushing it. 16 would be like near impossible. Like you really don't have like a built-in mechanism of like using this thing. And I'm sure they might get away with like third-party accessories or first-party ones of like an easel or whatnot, but really doesn't feel like proper for it to just be like something that's not included with the product, because the product is literally unusable. Like it would be unusable at that size without anything like this. So I'm very curious to see like what they end up doing if they decide to take the easy way out of just saying like, hey, buy another $300 accessory and you too can use this product. But that feels less and less like the Apple we know and love, and feels more and more like the Apple that is becoming Apple. So yeah, I'm not too sure where it's going to go in that direction. I know like the makers of AstroPad and Luna Display, they made something really cool this past month called Dartboard, and that's basically a giant foam like surface, which is probably about 16 inches, or no, much larger than 16 inches actually. And it has an insert for an 11-inch or a 12-inch iPad. And once you put it in there, it gives you a much larger surface to start using, so that way you can manipulate it without like working with this little tiny thing. So I can imagine that if you had like a big, very large iPad, that would be even better. But you really need more chunk to it at that point. You don't want a thin device that you might snap with your knee by accident, right? You want something that's going to be stationary, it's not going to move, or you want it to be something that you can move around on your lap or on your work surface. So it's gonna be very interesting where Apple takes this. Maybe it's not an iPad, like you said. Maybe it's something that runs macOS proper, and it's not. It's something in between. And we'll just have to see. Maybe it's it's a display only. It's not like a device. That would be even weirder, cooler actually. Not necessarily weirder, but much cooler that you can plug it into either a Mac or an iPad now that they supposedly support secondary displays properly, right?
Yeah, like truly a portable display. That is an interesting idea. I'm reminded that, not that I've really seen much about them or if anyone actually uses them, but like Samsung, I think, makes a chonker of a tablet, like probably 16 inches or bigger. So there's like a precedence, I suppose, for there being that large of tablets. Although no one buys Android tablets, but I know that they have existed in the past, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, be kind of interesting to see where this one goes. If we, like get multiple USB-C ports or something, multiple Thunderbolt ports or something. That's something that I know that, at least in the community around the app I work on my day job, people would want because they're plugging in like Thunderbolt SSDs and they're editing externally off of that, and they would like to also plug in an external display. So I can see that being, again, another argument for like having it be this hybrid between iOS and macOS where maybe it runs both. I don't know.
Yeah, it feels like a very unaptly like solution to run both, right? They're probably gonna pick one,
Yeah,
and they'll likely pick iPad OS just because that's where the touchscreen smarts are, without all the legacy that macOS has. But at the same time, like you have a bunch of legacy that doesn't know how to use a big display properly and all that, as well. Though you can also make the argument that the pro apps on the iPad like are doing the right thing and they are keeping up with the times, so that's really not an issue. So that's like the big caveat there. So yeah, we'll have to see. On the topic of rumors, do you think we're gonna see like Macs this year with the M2 in them? Like we got the MacBook Air,
like
right? That was the first one, but are we gonna get new MacBook Pros, new Mac Minis, stuff like that?
I don't know. It'll be interesting to see kind of. I think there are a couple things at work. One is like the pandemic shortage of chips that I think is we're kind of getting over it, but of course these things need to be done well in advance, months and months and months in advance to be able to get the supply for whatever next product you're going to be releasing. So I would be interested to see if, I mean, to be fair to Apple, they are the number one buyer at the chip fab that they, TSMC. So it would be, if they're like, yes, we're going to get the M2 Pro, M2 Max, whatever, I think it's definitely possible. I guess I'm interested to see what their actual cadence is, if they kind of stick to a yearly release schedule like they have been, like with Intel chips, or if they do 18 months or something like that. I don't know. For me, well, yeah, I guess that doesn't really matter. I guess I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit awkward for Apple too because they've like set themselves up for such a regular schedule, both in terms of like software, like once a year is brand new software, and they're finally like pulling away from that. It's no longer like once a year; it's several times a year. You're gonna get big point releases, much like Mac OS was like, hey, here's 10.1 and here's 10.2 18 months later, and that like might work better for Apple to not have such regular releases anymore, and to like take some more time polishing stuff, or maybe they have a regular release which is just like the bare bones kernel system level stuff, and then all the apps come later, throughout the year when they're ready, so you get a little preview of them but then they come out afterwards. But yeah, they really set themselves up in a corner with the A series chips at the very least, and on the iPhone, where it's like every year there has to be a new one, and it's gonna come out next year, because there's a new iPhone, and so far it's been one fast one iteration, one fast one iteration, kind of thing. So we'll see where it goes, but it doesn't seem like that pattern is long for this world. It seems like we're hitting the wall.
Yeah.
But one thought that I had with regard to all this is maybe Apple has identified that it feels like the A series has gone like too high in their number, like the A16,
Sure.
and maybe they just are looking to relaunch it completely and go with the M series. Like, what if we get an M series iPhone next year?
Yeah.
And maybe this is leading to into our next topic a little bit, but Apple may or may not be going to USB-C with their phones, according to an interview where they may or may not have confirmed anything at all. But if Apple does go to USB-C on their phones, maybe they do it alongside a Thunderbolt transition as well, right? There's nothing worse than like transferring stuff off your phone, and that's the one use that like many people have for their port other than charging. So if you can go at full throttle there, then maybe that solves so many more issues as well. And at that point, why isn't an A series chip, and why not just an M series Nano or an M series Air or whatever they want to marketing speak it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting idea. I think where I'm at, like on a like personal device level, is I have the M1 MacBook Air, and I have my work M1 Max computer. But I, aside from the blue color being the thing that wanted me to upgrade to the M2 MacBook Air, I didn't feel like there was enough of an improvement to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the phones now, where cool, the A15 is it's so incremental, but I just get a new phone because I'm on the upgrade program. But that's not enough to get me to get a new MacBook Air every year,
Mm-hmm.
because the one I have is like the M1 is still great and it still works awesome. So I don't feel any need to do that.
I was going to argue it's a much
But
more expensive purchase, but it really isn't, is it?
but it's not. Yeah, the Air
It's
is
about the same
actually
price.
cheaper than my phone.
Anyways, continue.
And it's no, yeah, you're good. It's like I got the version with 8 gigs of RAM and it works fine, and it has the slightly upgraded SSD to 500 gigs, but that's it. It was under $1,000 and it works great. I use it rarely because I'm almost always working on my work computer, but when I do want to use it, even for coding, like it works fine. So I don't know. I can't justify it myself, like a yearly cadence for that. But if they did do something like the 18-month cadence, where there were, if that gave them enough time to make larger improvements, to say like tack on 2 more cores or improve the, I don't know, the clock speed significantly. They never talk about what the exact clock speed is, but if there were larger upgrades, that would be something that would make me upgrade every 18 months instead of maybe like every 2 years with those yearly upgrades or something. But that's just me.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see.
No, that makes total sense. Moving on to our actual topic that we have. So Apple did kind of confirm that they are kind of being forced to go to USB-C, and they may or may not actually like bring this to the iPhone. All the headlines are kind of going crazy, saying that it's confirmed, it's happening, when Apple could do literally anything else, just entirely out of spite. So like, how do you think it's going to go? Do you think that they're going to actually follow through with what the headlines think they said and have a USB-C iPhone for next year for the 14s/15/ whatever they decide to call it? Or is this the end of the road for ports on phones entirely, and we're going entirely to a wireless future?
I think Apple would like that. I think they'd like for it to be entirely portless. I don't know if they'll be able to swing it for the next phone, just again because things are done so well far in advance that probably on their next phone, if it hasn't been planned out already.
Upon. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the article mentions that the Wall Street Journal had an event, I think it was last Tuesday, the 22nd or something like that, that European lawmakers, they ratified whatever, some enforcement of making all smartphones have the USB-C port from 2024. And then Jaws at Apple said that, quote, Apple will obviously have to comply, adding, we've no choice. So unless, again, they do just pull out the portless iPhone, it sounds like it's going to happen from what, it came from Apple. So it'd be interesting. I think one thing I was thinking about was I can't remember exactly where. I think it was like the previous Apple Watch that was released. They had some sort of like wireless transfer interface through like the normal, charging port or something like that. Do you remember that? Was that right?
Yeah. I was it for the watch or was it just in general? It was something they were exploring.
I don't know. But that would, you'd have to have something like that where if there was no Wi-Fi, I guess it could use Bluetooth to transfer things to your Mac, or you'd need some sort of quote unquote direct-ish connection to perform like a manual backup or get things off of that with no internet connection. So that would like be the only thing with a portless phone would be like, how do they do that in the best way without any charging port?
Well, let's consider what they have now, right? So we have an iPhone with Lightning.
Yep.
It is single-sided Lightning, so it's limited to USB 2 speeds, which is like about 480 megabits per second.
Yeah.
Which it actually can like reasonably do. So that's not really up for debate. However, the phones currently have Wi-Fi 6, which is something that can get more than 480 megabits in like the most ideal conditions. And I assume next year they might have Wi-Fi 6E, which allows them to use the 6 gigahertz range, right, which can go over a gigabit. So there is like a wireless future here that can supposedly do these much faster transfer speeds if it needed to. Just like over 5G, it can get like 2,000, 3,000 megabits and get like an insane screenshot. So if you can do that locally over Wi-Fi, then that's kind of like the ideal world that you would want, right? So there's that option available to them. They don't have to do it via like some Qi superset charging puck thing that does go to a wire. Though that said, if anyone who here has ever tried to debug anything over Xcode with with the wireless stuff, it's fine until you need to pause and then like wait for the debugger to connect and then wait for the debugger to pull all the local variables and then wait for the debugger to figure anything out, because that takes absolutely forever wirelessly. And that is where like this hypothetical ideal future seems to fall apart, because that wireless speed is supposedly faster than USB 2, right? But why is it? Why isn't it? So that's where like the wireless part may not actually come to fruition, and maybe like that puck is more reliably like wireless, like it's such a short distance that it doesn't need to like do all the error correcting that Wi-Fi needs to do and the changing of channels and stuff like that. It can just go ahead and like use a stable connection that will always be high fidelity. Maybe that's something that will work, right? If you were an absolute child and you ran a company just the way you wanted to, and I'm not talking about Twitter here, and you are in charge of Apple and you want to spite the EU for what they're doing, what's the most evil way that you can comply and then not really care at the same time?
Yeah, I don't know. Make it USB-C 2.0 or something like that. Like, make it ultra slow. I don't know where you're going with this.
So my idea was the European iPhone will not have USB-C. It will not have Lightning. It will just have like Qi charging. And that's the way things are.
Oh.
It does not come with a Qi charger in the box, by the way. This is just
right.
oh, you have to bring your own cable now, because this is the carve out that was made for wireless charging. So that's the European market, and then the rest of the world actually gets a USB-C iPhone. Like that would be the biggest way to really show it that the laws were right all along, and this is the way that things should be. I don't think Apple should do this by any means, but if they really wanted to spite the EU, I think that would be the path forward if they wanted to truly be a child about it.
Yeah. That said, don't some iPhone 14s have a SIM card slot? Like,
yeah, so the
in
US,
some countries, so it's like,
the American iPhone does not have a SIM card slot. They're trying to forge ahead with this eSIM stuff, which is actually pretty cool when it works. And you quickly forget about like not needing to deal with the damn SIM card. So that's cool. When these sorts of like improvements happen and they work out, they're great. When they don't work out, then they're like horrible, right?
A disaster.
Yeah, but it turns out the iPhone actually has a spacer where the SIM card slot would go. So it's just a difference in casing, not really in internal components. So there's absolutely enough room in there for a SIM card tray, because in Europe they have a SIM card tray. So maybe you have to communicate with your phone via the SIM card tray.
Yeah, there you go. That'd be good. No. But what I was trying to get at is there's like precedent for making like kind of two physically separate iPhones. So I guess they could do it.
I think the dual SIM, like when it first came out, was also separate. Like there was no eSIM for the dual SIM in China or something. So there actually were two SIM cards. Or something wacky like that. I might be getting those details totally wrong, though.
The USB 4 version 2.0 spec was just released, just published, and it can hit 120 gigabits per second, which is nuts. That's not that's unidirectional. That's one way, or 80 gigabits bidirectional, which is just stupid fast. I think Thunderbolt 4 kept the the Thunderbolt 3 speed of 40 gigabits per second bidirectional, but it was like over a longer distance or something. If I remember right.
It made it work over passive cables. So Thunderbolt 3 was like purely active cabling.
Yeah.
And USB 4 Thunderbolt 4 started certifying passive cabling, and it made more things required. So the Thunderbolt 3 spec was like, oh, you can have it at 20 gigabits because your computers are slow and can't deal with the full 40 or something. And you can have it like optionally support this feature of like doing hubs. But Thunderbolt 4 like made it explicit, like, hey, you have to do the hubs, or you have to do minimum 20 or ideally 40. So I think that's where the difference was.
Gotcha.
This one works with all the same cabling and all the same plugs. The only difference is that they have like a different way of encoding the signal. And Intel like showed this off a few years ago actually for Thunderbolt 5, which is not a thing anymore. We're just like squarely in USB 4 version 2.
Right.
Which is the wonderful naming that came out once again. And this effectively doubles all four of the lanes from 20 gigabits to 40 gigabits. So you get 40 and 40 in one direction, so it's 80, and then 40 and 40 in the other direction, so that's another 80. However, because of this, you can configure 3 lanes to go in one direction and 1 lane to come back. So you get 40 in one direction, but then 120 to your device. And this can allow things like having a really high resolution display, for instance, but also having ports at the back of that display that can communicate back to your computer. So in the past, the Thunderbolt 4 version of this, where it's just like, hey, go all in 80 gigabits in one direction, that was like a one direction thing. There was no talk back to like support other devices. So this is what this is explicitly supporting, and I am here for this future. This seems fun.
Yeah, I mean, USB in or USB-C in general has been great, but then when you tack on again, quote unquote Thunderbolt, but just this high bandwidth, being able to, have a display just plug in with USB-C is awesome. I mean, you could get into like more niche stuff, like the article mentions, like external GPUs, and very, very fast SSDs. Like external GPUs have been a thing for a while, but you were definitely bandwidth limited with those.
Mm-hmm.
If you ended up using like a high power, or so yeah, like a high performance GPU. So the idea that I really like that they've kind of like they let you unevenly split the lanes to 120, but you still get that 40 back, which is Thunderbolt 4 as it is now, one way. So
Mm-hmm.
that's yeah, super cool all around, and really I think opens up the possibilities. And for what it's worth, for all the kind of whining and reluctance that Apple has for USB-C, it really is pretty dang nice to have a single port for everything.
Mm-hmm.
I know that, I mean, it's been a hot minute since Apple pioneered that with the first MacBook, or the just MacBook. What was it, like 2012 or something?
Mm-hmm.
And we're
That was a
finally kind of getting,
non-Thunderbolt device too, right? That was just a USB-C
yeah,
device.
yeah, with just the one USB-C port, and everyone was freaking out about that. It was 2012. 10 years later, we're finally getting to the point where, yeah, you could realistically have everything, including displays, go over USB-C, and it's like not a big deal anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I still use dongles. I have a Thunderbolt dock. I have a bunch of USB Type A port devices, but it's not. For me, it's not as big of a deal, and just increasing the bandwidth and getting more support for this overall is going to be really cool. So
Yeah, I think the turning points were, one, to make much cheaper cabling. Like, you no longer need
yes,
those active cables that are literal computers at each end of the
yeah,
cable, just to have Thunderbolt. So you no longer need that. You no longer need really expensive licensing from Intel, so you can make Thunderbolt controllers if you like want to without needing to talk with Intel at all. And that is something that will allow more and more manufacturers to want to include it into their own systems. So it's basically not just Apple building this out anymore.
oh yeah,
It can be anyone. So that was like the second thing, and then the third thing. I forgot what the third thing is. But in any case, it's something that's a lot more open and available now. And that's what's going to allow. Oh, the third thing that I want to bring up is that you have support for hubs now. Before it was like just point to point. It's a peer to peer network. And now you have the ability to add more connections
yes,
to that one, which allows you to have that one device with just one plug. You can actually have more stuff come out of it, especially if that plug supports 80 gigabits bidirectionally. Like, there's plenty of bandwidth there for all sorts
yeah,
of needs. Though, of course, it's going to take a while for these USB 4 version 2 devices to come out. And how will you know if your device supports USB 4 version 2? Well, thankfully, the USB consortium, or whatever they like to call themselves,
implementers forum, I think.
yeah, the implementers forum, they decided that their whole naming system stinks and they needed something that works better, and therefore they're just going off of speed now. So if your thing supports 80 gigabits, it says 80 gigabits on it. If it supports 120 gigabits, it says 120 gigabits on it. So that's basically how you tell the speed of your thing. If it supports 40, then it supports all the things that the 40, the Thunderbolt 4 standard essentially can do. So you're not allowed to say that unless you support those things. So I think that's probably the hardest of the things to support, is the fast speed, and then the rest are like checkboxes based on how the protocol works and everything. So yeah, I think it's finally getting to a good place.
Yep.
When are we gonna get multi-port iPads now? Now that we have Thunderbolt support that is out of this world.
It would be amazing. Even 2 ports would be just killer.
would each of those ports be on opposite sides so you can plug in an Apple Pencil on both and just use as handlebars?
No. With the little tiny Thunderbolt to or Lightning to USB-C dongle in between. Oh, that's so gross, dude.
And then they move the camera down because there's not enough room for the plug in the camera, so the camera's off center. It's not in landscape; it's still portrait, just off center. Anyways,
It's not.
They put it in the corner. They put the camera in the top left corner, and then it's the best of both worlds, right?
45-degree angle.
Yeah, the sensors at a 45-degree angle. Exactly. Anyways,
pass, Apple. Please don't.
This week's episode of Code Completion is once again brought to you by Super Easy Timer. Super Easy Timer is a quick and easy to use timer app for your Mac. It's completely text-based, so you can type in English what you want. 20 minutes or 5 p.m., hit enter, and instantly start a timer. The timer understands English text to create, update, and start a new timer. You can quickly change an active countdown, even while it's still counting down. There are simple keyboard shortcuts to reset or pause, but otherwise, no menus, no sliders, just use English to control your timer. We want to thank Super Easy Timer for sponsoring our show. Search for Super Easy Timer on the Mac App Store today to give it a try. So, Spencer, you have a code completion tip for us today. And this is something that you were actively struggling with, and then you found a solution, and it was absolutely amazing. So please share.
Yes. So I was working with my favorite, actually least favorite thing in the world, regular expressions in at work. So the deal was, where I'm using regular expressions, and it's not just like a small one. It's like there are multiple capture groups. That it's a fairly long, like 25 plus character regular expression, and I was like, oh, this sucks. And what I'll always do is I'll go to, it's like regex101.com. You can paste that in, and then it will let you can type whatever you want. It will see what parts of the regular expression it'll work against to make sure that it's all working right. And I got thinking that I remember that there was some new stuff from DubDub about regular expressions. So I asked in our chat. I was Googling. I figured there was I remembered there was a DSL for regular expressions, but I remember there being a specific way to convert it over. But I couldn't remember if that was like a community thing that someone had made or what. And it turns out what you have to do is you have to be using the regex literals, which is you have a /, write your regex, then end it with a /. Ours were originally in just strings. So there was a little conversion I had to do, just take out the string literal and put it into a regex literal. But once you do that, you can right click on it and say refactor, and then it says something like generate.
Convert to regex builder, right?
Yeah. Refactor, convert to regex builder. And what that will do is it will take that regex literal that's just like in a single line probably, and pull it out into this nice DSL that iOS 16 has, that is infinitely more readable. It does the exact same thing, so you're not getting any benefit that way, but you can actually look at the regular expression and understand what's going on without having to pull it into like another website or another program just to figure out what the hell am I looking at, right? So that's awesome. Ultimately, I didn't end up using it right now because we support pre-iOS 16, and I didn't really feel like writing checks to like availability checks. And anyway, I commented out and I was like, let's use this after when iOS 16 is the base version of iOS that we support. But it was cool nonetheless to make the code base that I work in a little bit easier to read, both for myself later and for anyone else that happens to have the misfortune of dealing with regular expressions in the future in our code base. So that would be my tip. We'll put a couple links. The one that I use to remember where how to convert it to that regex builder is from quickbirthstudios.com. And then I think the actual usage of the regular expression DSL, there's a good article on Use Your Love that goes into all of the different, like the choice of optionality, capture closures that you can use to do more complex things, like capture specific parts of that regular expression and pull them out. So you could do that before with just the stringified regular expression or the regex literal. But again, this is just for kind of the situation of making it easier to read through, in my opinion. So that's the tip for the day.
Yeah. Whenever I need to deal with the regex, I always like find one of those websites that deconstructs it visually and gives you like some diagramming and some example like worksheets that you can kind of use to see how well it's parsing stuff. And that all works fine. Like I'm like, oh, I understand this. I don't know how to modify it from that point forward, though. Like, I can try to, like, oh, I want to add one more closure here, and no, this is not working. Like, how do I get this kind of character again? And then you're, like, searching through that little documentation viewer it tends to give you. And this is the state of the art of, like, building these things, right? It's not, like, this is the randomest website on Earth. This is literally the best you got. So I am so happy to see regex builders be a thing, because when you get like actual code completion for all the different types of things that you can do with a regex, and it's all spelled out so you can remember it like a sane person, and have the auto completion like do the rest of the work for you to actually get it there. And then if you need to make modifications to it, it's very straightforward, because you can literally read what it's doing as it's parsing, basically. It turns it into like computer programming code rather than like punch card code, which is what I feel like regex.
I just looked it up. They were made in 1951. It's been a hot minute.
Yeah, like I feel like they're still using punch cards or something back then. So this is that's the world they lived in, and that was probably like so much better than punch cards. Like I imagine, I don't think they were using punch cards back then.
I don't know,
but it certainly feels like it with today's like tooling. Those feel very antiquated. And even if you get like syntax coloring, it's not like you get autocompletion while you're typing them out. So, like just having the regex builder. Being able to print that out into a regex, or do the vice versa, to have a regex and print out the regex builder, like just that has been like really cool. But having tools to actively convert between the two, I think that's like the cherry on top of the cake. And this means that you can write your own like pattern matching stuff and reuse it, right? Who would have thunk that you don't need to have a parser run every single time you have a regex. And you can actually do very interesting things at build time and compile time to build things out. So for our mini review corner, we have a new device that finally arrived, and that is the iPad Pro.
Nice.
Fourth generation? I'm going to say fourth generation. The fourth generation 11-inch, which is this guy. It looks identical, so I'm not going to bother like showing it on screen. Weighs the same on all that. The funny things are the camera like bump is so much tinier than the iPhone camera bump.
Yeah. Dude.
So that's a reminder that the iPad camera is not great. It should be a lot better, but I think they're thinner than phones, right?
Yeah. They are.
Yeah, which is like a weird thing to think of. But anyways, iPads are thinner. They weigh a lot less without their giant keyboard case. So that's always a thing to think about. And I had a chance to try the pencil support, which like shows that little thing in proximity, and it works like a fair distance amount away from the screen. Like it's not right up there. You have a lot of wiggle room there to get comfortable. On notes, at least, it does a fairly good job at like showing you what you're going to draw. There are some issues I had with it. It does not seem to do anything with your tilt until you touch it down. So I'm sure like apps can probably do something with that, but Notes just didn't. Notes has a bunch of new tools in iOS 16. I thought that was fun. I didn't even notice them until I was playing around with this. And like there's a very nice watercolor brush that the Notes app now has, and it seems to do color mixing pretty well. And yeah, that all works, and you can preview the size. And the only like thing I didn't like about it was as you have your pencil hovering there and you see the shape and you change the size, it doesn't change the size of the shape, so you can't like react interactively change it and like see it before you start drawing. So I'm sure that's just a shortcoming that doesn't feel like it's a limitation of the pencil at all, because it's a software that's like doing all this. So that's just like one thing to consider with all that. But overall feels much faster, like tremendously faster than my A12Z generation iPad. So like a lot of the slownesses that I was seeing just feel speedier. So not that was a slow device by any means, but it still shows like after a few years you do still feel the differences of 10%, 10%, 10%. They really do stack up in a beneficial way. So thought that was really cool. I have not found Stage Manager yet. I'm kind of putting myself through I'm not going to actually look it up. I'm going to try to like land on it by accident. And I did not land on it by accident. So I don't know if this is Apple trying to hide it as best as possible without like forcing people to use it, because it's a hot mess, just like we were mentioning before of how system preferences on Ventura is a hot mess. And yeah, they are hot messes all around. So I can't say if Stage Manager is a hot mess yet because I haven't like landed across it. I wanna be surprised when I eventually do figure that out. I heard that it's like someone spoiled to me that it's like a setting you need to do, but that was on Twitter, and I've been like staying clear of Twitter lately. So yeah, I don't know. As I said, it will happen when it happens. Have you used it yet?
I have not. I was going to ask you, have you used it on macOS?
I also don't know how to activate it on Mac OS.
Oh.
So
I have seen,
if it happens, it's going to happen.
I have seen the option for macOS, and I'm like, I'm not interested. The dock works fine. So, I don't know. It seems I did have a student that you always, get the students that will like install beta software. Because
then you learn very quickly.
Yeah. And he was using macOS Ventura beta like months ago, and I saw him using it. I was like, this doesn't look good on on macOS. It just seems like a big version of the dock or minimizing Windows. So I'm not really interested in it. I'll try it sometime, but I don't really think it's going to be like a workflow improver by any means. I just, command tab through things and command tilde things to go through different windows in the same app. So yeah,
I think I am like someone who would like it because I do have stupid amounts of windows open, and being able to group them by like topic or what I'm working on makes a whole lot more sense to me than switching spaces. Sure. Mostly because like you might have something that like does dual purpose, and like what do you make yet another space for that, and like not really know where the space is, and then like have the window open on the wrong space. It's a big mess. So like I tried use spaces heavily and have since like stopped using them entirely. So maybe once the polish kind of starts creeping in for Stage Manager, it will be something that I like to use. But yeah, it will be a certain amount of time before I dig through this. I'm staring at it now, the new settings app for system preferences on Ventura, which I'm assuming is where the setting is. I spent like a good 4 minutes looking for network the other day.
Dude,
because I needed to like look or something. I'm like,
Yep.
Where is network? I'm like looking through like the sections, imagining them as rows in my head. It was just not working. Also, this window looks comically small on my like ginormous displays.
Display.
I'm on a 5K right now, and it still looks tiny. Even on my laptop, it looks like hilariously small compared to what we're gonna deal with, deal with on a daily basis. So, you can make it taller. I just realized. It still seems like it needs more horizontal space. Mm-hmm. But yeah, this is an interesting choice Apple made. So. yeah, maybe Mac OS is becoming iPad OS, and that's just what's going to end up on the 16-inch iPad. As always, I want to personally thank everyone for listening in this week. Please be sure to follow us at Twitter at CodeCompletion to know when new episodes go live, and feel free to tweet at us if there's ever a topic you'd like for us to dig into. Most importantly, as a small podcast, please be sure to share this with your friends and family who are also interested in any part of the process of app development. It's your support that enables us to continue doing this, and we hope to grow a healthy community around everything we discuss. Once again, I want to give my thanks to Spencer, who is at Spencer C. Curtis, that's SpencerCurtis on Twitter, for joining me this week. My name, once again, is Dimitri. You can find me at Dimitri Buniol, that's DimitryBouniol, and we'll see you all next week.
Bye.
Bye. In other news, I got a bunch of toys. They're all here neatly in boxes.
Speaking of cables with computers on each side of them.
Yes. Actually, no, the DACs don't have... I guess the transducers are they transducers modules? Transceivers, I think. Transceivers. Yeah. I know computers, everyone, I swear. I guess those are little computers, right?
Yeah,
dude. They go blinky blinky.
They do indeed.
They do indeed. I love how our discussion about like the new USB 4 standard is like so much faster than all my networking gear that I spent quite a lot of money.
And that's the nuts thing. They're passive now too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So time to return all this and go for the 400 gigabit networking cards. That'll do. Yeah. The only problem is that like no computers have like support for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's like enterprise level stuff, dude.
And even if it is, it's not like you can transfer data off of a computer at those speeds. Like
400 gigabits. Yeah, that's 40 gigabyte or 40 plus gigabytes. That's way faster than an SSD can even spit data out, even at like PCIe 4 levels.
Yeah, you basically have direct access to RAM at that point. And you need to write the card to have direct access to RAM. Like that's the troublesome part. So it's probably going to be a while before like all these things actually come to fruition. For now, it's mostly just high bandwidth just for displays. Because that's the only thing that can really make use of those speeds. Like even networking, not really. Like you can kind of get somewhere close, but you can't max it out. So in any case, I got a bunch of gear to at least 10 gigabitify my home. I got lots of computers, as you can see, and so far just the one I'm talking to you on and my Mac Studio, which is right over here, are the only ones that are 10 gig capable. In this house, but seeing as my brand new iPad has Wi-Fi 6E, that can supposedly go above a gigabit, and seeing as I want to make the 10 gigabit available in more spots in my home, that's why I wanted to go down this route. So I got a bunch of access points for all corners. Probably going to set them to low power so they don't like fight over each other, and every room just has like its dedicated thing. And then I got a bunch of switches and routers and stuff like that. And those ones will actually be able to talk with like between each other at 25 gigabit, which is a cool number until you like read about Thunderbolt and be sad again. So like that will be fun to iPerf 3 and then be like cool. Yeah. Yep. I'm just happy to get more than 1 gigabit. That'll be nice just for like the silly things like time machine backups or accessing the NAS and having stuff stream from one corner of the house to the other. So yeah, it's the simple things in life that you get to benefit from these sorts of things. So
yeah, and the eventuality of getting fiber to your house.
Yeah, which apparently is never going to happen. I called AT&T again, and they were like, so normally our gigabit fiber plans, they trench, they don't hang on poles. So that was a very sad thing that I learned today. So it may or may not happen. So So far, it's AT&T rep one said 6 to 12 months, and the other said they're going to be ripping up your street if it's going to happen.
Oh,
So
fun.
yeah, that's probably not going to happen anytime soon. So hopefully this at least alleviates some of my networking woes where all the HomeKit devices are fighting over each other for airtime and then causing the TV to die. And then we can watch TV like normal people because I refuse to spend money on normal TV like normal people.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. See ya.